Hello mate, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Silver. I'm alive and well. Thank you for those of you that have been asking. At the end of this video, I will get into why I've taken such a break. The reason I'm back is obvious, right? It's like a super exciting time to be an action RPG player. Right now, we've got Last Epoch doing its thing, which looks really interesting. Obviously, we've got 0.2 early access for POE 2 patch coming up. We're going to get a whole economy reset, as you well know. Now, this video, why you're here, is all about reimagining the endgame. So I'm calling it reimagining, right? Because there's some pretty fundamental decisions that they've, taken that have changed in POE 2. We've all now got a feel for it. We've got a feel for what they're trying to do there. And there's a lot to discuss there. I have my own ideas. And as you know, if you are familiar with this channel, I don't like to just talk about them. I like to also try and present them in a way that's kind of visual and digestible and kind of in the UI sort of design of POE 2. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to be talking about towers. We're going to be talking about tablets. We're going to be talking about a reimagining of the Atlas tree and how the extra content can kind of work, but also the way that we progress in that content and can customize it. And then we're also going to do like a little bit of a bonus kind of theory thing, which is inspired by the Legacy of Phrecia. So if you've been playing POE 1, stick around for that because I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on it. I think it's interesting. We will see. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. So the way this is going to go, I'm going to break things down into kind of like the problem and the area of the design and then what I think the solution kind of is. So let's just start really nice and light with this one, and that is just the way that we view the Atlas. Currently we have like, the map view, and that looks like this. Obviously, as you can tell, you're all very familiar with this. We look at our nodes, and this is about as far as we can zoom out. We can zoom out a little further than this. They also added like the ability to see citadels in the fog, which is really helpful. However, what I think would be nice is to have like an aerial view that we've got now, but then also like a map view. So the map view would be like if you carried on scrolling out, then we would get a bit more of like a tactical kind of like traditional map layout. And this would zoom out, much further. It's like bird's eye views. This is obviously just a rough mock-up. So you'd have a search bar up in the top left up here, and then you would have like a filters thing, and you could filter by like the biome or the node type, whether you completed that node or not, or like the proximity to you, etc, like the nearest X or Y. And this would be a little bit more detailed than it is in this image. You could have like nice icons showing off the different kind of tower mods and whether things were completed or not. I just wanted to give like a rough idea that, imagine you scroll out and you get like this ruffled sound effect, and it's like paper unfolding, kind of like the act transitions that we see at the minute with the kind of like animatic paper animations that they have there. Do you know what else would be really cool on this as a side note is like if you could actually just like create a series of connected dots, and that is like to plan your path. All of these changes will make more sense as I talk about the next thing I want to talk about. That is tablets. Okay, so this is where probably my most cutthroat take here, and that is that I want to argue and petition for the removal of tablets entirely. You just end up in this situation where you're having to set up a load of these different tablets and then kind of like, get them all on all of your different towers, and you have to do all this stuff to get maximum juice, and it just feels like half of my gameplay is spent setting up the game that I want to play. I get the point that you're creating a sense of like juicing and reward, but gating that behind kind of like RNG and trade, and then I think it basically makes you feel more like you're losing out rather than you're winning. And I think there's actually a theme of a lot of the design challenges when you're dealing with like Endgame that kind of sits on one side of this fence. Sometimes it creates a feeling that where you're getting a bonus, and on the other side, it creates a feeling that if you're not doing it, you're losing. And we want to avoid the sense that you have to do something, otherwise you're doing it unoptimally as much as possible. And we want to create fun bonuses as much as possible. And this philosophy drives a lot of our other changes. So that is my argument. Just remove tablets entirely and just go back to a much more simple thing of just rolling maps. That gets rid of 90% of the busy work. that the system's created in PoE 2. Now, I've put an alternative here. I don't actually recommend this. This wouldn't be like my desire to see this. However, if the designers did really want to have a system where you've got this extra bit of content, you know, this extra consumable item essentially that can drop and juice maps even further, like sextants, I would drop compasses. Let's call them compasses for now. And these compasses, instead of tablets, they're like an item slot in your character, and you basically like just put the compass in there, and then it has a number of uses. So it's not specifically affecting certain nodes, so you don't have to do the whole tower overlay gameplay thing. I still think this is bad. Most players, I think, just want to alch and go. Essentially, I mean, you can only alch and go basically now, and I think players want it that way. I think we've got a better idea for what a compass could be, and that is as we're going on to talking about towers. Tower gameplay. Towers is a pretty hot topic. Obviously, GGG have heard the feedback about towers. People don't really like them. They felt pretty static, so they added the extra maps. And now in 0.2, it looks like we're getting even more interesting tower options. So we're going to have bosses in towers, and you can get other extra content can now spawn in towers. And this, I think, is GGG's attempt to make towers interesting and fun and have equal parity and equal value to a regular node or a regular map. I think there's a missed opportunity here. I've got a shout out to Felix, who is one of the members in the Discord. Join our Discord, by the way, link in the description below. So Felix mentioned this idea just in passing one day, and I was like, that's a great idea. Let's start off with reducing the number of towers by like 5 to 8 times. So they're much rarer, so we're not having to do them all the time. We've already got rid of tablets, so you don't have to do them for tablets. And then in place of like the tablet holder at the end, we're going to have something different. But the actual gameplay of these towers, let's imagine you go into a tower, it has a series of floors. Each floor that you complete, the challenge increases, but you're also gaining increased reveal radius. The idea being that like when you see a tower, it's something you want to work towards because you want to reveal more area, but also it's a unique kind of gameplay, kind of like the elevator lift as you go into a Trial Master fight, or the ziggurat lift, that kind of thing, where each tower has its own randomized little like floors and different challenges, different types of monsters and bosses. But the cool thing about this is you can add like Atlas support that kind of changes the way that towers play. So, you know, say an example here, precursor panopticon, towers reveal radius is increased by 25 to 50%. And these are additional nodes that you can spec into on your Atlas passive tree. Vertigo, that should be the other way around. You should be able to see this, but that actually says towers have 2 additional floors, so you've got even more chance to push the tower content there. Compass attunement, reward options offered by the precursor compass have 30% increased rarity. Now, what is a precursor compass? Let's get into that. It's a device that offers the player specific information about the Atlas. So this is offering players more agency about how they want to engage with the Atlas and kind of craft and traverse and navigate their own Atlas. So it allows them to make informed decisions about which direction they would like to go. Like the Divine font in PoE 1, which I think people really like. It's like you open it up and you're like, oh, here's some cool options, especially since transfigured gems come in. You're going to get like 3 to 5 options. You can see like an example of mock-up just here in the middle. And each floor not only increases the reveal range, but it also increases the rarity of outcomes that you can get on this tablet. Alright, so let's take a look at the list on the left here. You've got direction, location, and travel options, which are increasingly rare. And then you've got a load of other options that we can go into. But direction of Citadel. So the idea here is if you click that option, it would give you like a compass pointing exactly in the direction of where that nearest node is. So say it was like Citadel of Copper or Citadel of Iron, you would then be able to see kind of like, okay, this is the way I need to go to get there. The same thing with unique maps, you could have that. Then you've got location of. Now this is like rarer and more powerful because not only does it point the direction, but you actually reveal that little bit of fog of war for that node specifically. And then we've got the really kind of like quite powerful and I think like really interesting and empowering kind of option here, which is travel to on your Atlas. You can now like actually click a node that was, you know, the nearest citadel of X, or, you know, the nearest unique map. And essentially it acts as if you have a connected point there, so you can actually just travel to that node straight away and kind of jump over maybe a mountain range, or etc, etc. We then got some other stuff like, you know, towers reveal, and they have like, you know, increased rarity options, so you can get lucky with the rolls, and you can drop additional horizon orbs. We'll talk about horizon orbs in a second. You don't even see the divine font until you say, right, I'm finished with this tower, I don't want to go any further. And one cool thing you could do as well with this, like, less punishing, every time you die in a tower, you might not immediately lose that tower, but one of the options is blocked out. So the more portals you use, essentially, the less you're able to actually use the precursor compass at the end. So you have less options, or maybe you even like brick it completely. So you're still getting the reveal benefit, but you're losing the additional bonus. And I think that is, as a side note, I think that's a much better way to like approach the kind of death penalty difficulty stuff. Is every time you die, you lose like there's an opportunity cost to some sort of reward that you're losing. And it's not 100 to 0. It's not like you lose the whole map. It's like, oh, you lose 2 of the mods, or, you know, 2 of the prefixes, or whatever. And in this case, this is a really nice example of that, where, yeah, you just lock out one of the options every time you die. And then you could have, you know, chance to not lock out an option on the Atlas node and on the Atlas tree. Anyway, that's kind of getting into it. Now I want to talk about the other reward here, which is bringing back horizon orbs. So I think a really fun, unique way to make towers, you know, not only from a gameplay point of view, but again, thinking about the rewards here, beyond the precursor compass, would be that could be the only place that horizon orbs drop. And horizon orbs, or horizon shards, would, you know, basically work very similarly. They would just allow you to change the layout of that node. So within that biome, you could change the layout of any node. All right, so that is towers. That's how I wanted to change up the way that towers work. So they're different from a gameplay point of view. They're also different from their rewards. Now, the meat of this video, I want to get into extra content, your breach, your expedition, ritual. I want to talk about like how that stuff I think should work very differently. All right, first, let's start off with the extra content accessibility. Okay, so here's the like initial problem that I've seen, and this is the problem I'm trying to solve here, is that it feels really steep to like get into those Atlas trees. You know, in POE 1, you had a really nice smooth curve where all you had to do was, you know, especially at the beginning, was just complete maps. And then you got some points and you could put them into the content you liked quite early. With this, it felt like, oh, I have to kill a boss like just to get my initial points, which then helps me get enough, you know, ritual shards or whatever, to then get the boss again, right? It just feels like too painful, that initial curve. This will bleed into a whole other load of changes, but the idea here is to like increase the number of points to 10 from 8. Those first 2 objectives to get your early points are much easier. Just open 40 class pans, 10 breaches, or like 20 breaches or something to do that. Then you've got, you know, kill 100 breach rares. You're like, okay, it's a bit more of a difficult thing, but I can do that. Then you've got kill Zesht. And you don't have to necessarily do these in order, right? So maybe you can get to Zesht before then, maybe you've funded, maybe you've got a breach stone from a friend or whatever, and you can do that and get those points that way. But there's just like 2 extra objectives in there that allow you to get extra points. So now we've got 10 points. Like, what do we do with those points? And this is my big advocation here, which is, I'm kind of like want to make the argument of going back to having a chance to spawn content based on your Atlas investment, rather than the node having content inherently on it. We've got rid of tablets, obviously. Okay, well, how do you get your extra content on those nodes? I would advocate going back to the POE 1 style of like chance to spawn breach, chance to spawn expedition, because I think it's just like much more reliable, it's much more consistent, and I would actually like simplify the whole thing a lot, which is that every point you spend in a content tree, you get 10% chance to spawn that content. In theory, by the time you're at like 8 points, you probably have a 100% chance if there's a 20% base chance. Let's just ignore that. Let's just say, like, for simplicity of the argument, there's 10 points. Every point you put into that tree, you get a 10% chance to spawn that content, to a point where eventually every single time you go into a map, you'll be able to guarantee that content. And I think that just feels really good for people. If you're going to give people the option of how they want to play, just like let them play that way eventually if they invest enough, right? And then this creates a problem, because the way that POE 2 works is that in theory you can max out all of your trees, right? If you just complete all of the objectives, you get all of the points, which was not the way in PoE 1. So I think like this is actually spawned like a really cool idea, which is that players can now toggle on trees that they want to have active. So you wouldn't want a situation where, you know, especially if you're adding like more and more content, say they add blight, say they add, you know, heist or what, like whatever, not heist, but in-map content. You wouldn't want a situation where you've maxed out all your trees and then you've got like 8 different types of extra content in each tree. It would feel bad for many reasons, obviously. So, as you can see on the right-hand side, we've got like trees active. And what if you had like up to 3 trees that you could have active at once? And you can see kind of like the example here, I've like activated the expedition tree. And so it's like highlighted. So you're getting your base chance to spawn content obviously anyway, but then you've got 1 tree that you can have active. And the idea then being that by completing the pinnacle content, like your Exarch and Eater stuff, like the PoE 2 equivalent being the Arbiter, if you're killing the Arbiter, if you get, progress through those objectives, you unlock more trees that you can have active at once. The Arbiter tree should always be active. That's considered like part of the core atlas or something, and maybe you could design it differently so it works that way. These extra content trees, you can then toggle them on or off. So you can max all of them, which feels good from like a, just like an agency point of view, but then you can only use some of them in each map. And you can just freely toggle them like on and off. So from map to map, you can change your strategy, and that gets rid of the whole loadout problem. Like you don't need like 3 loadouts, 4 loadouts, etc. It's just like, cool, I have all of them. I just turn on what I want to play that day or, in that current strategy, which is really cool. This system works really well with adding more and more content. You could have 10 extra content atlases, but you're only allowed 3 on at any time. Like from the designer's point of view, they're constantly having to look at like the opportunity cost balance and reworking the power, from league to league to league, which is really exciting. It frees them up to do stuff. All right, here is an example of like a breach tree, for example, that, I've just mocked up. I've added a couple of extra nodes because we have like 10 points now. So, make of those what you will. You've got all of like the core nodes here, but then like I've added Dreamwalker. You have a 2% chance to instantly be teleported into a Breach Stone when you open a Breach Lord's clasped hand or kill a Breach Lord. I thought that was like a fun thing. All of a sudden you get a free Breach Stone. So you've got the objectives on the left, on the top left there, but then on the bottom what I want to draw attention to is you just see the number of points. And so like if you hovered over that, it would say 10% chance for a node to contain a breach per point allocated. So as you allocate the points, whether that's, a small travel node or it's a notable, you're then increasing this chance, and then you're going to get more of that content, obviously. The final thing on the bottom left here is I've got rid of like the difficulty nodes. The travel nodes say like, +1 difficulty to the thing. I want to do difficulty a different way. I'll show you that in a second. But the other thing is like, it's really confusing because you could actually like, in theory, you could add extra difficulty, which did nothing. This was brought up by many people in the original design. Like instead of taking a notable, you could take 2 travel nodes, and then you're like, well, does that increase it beyond, you can in theory get more difficulty than the content allowed for, which made no sense. So we've got these back to travel nodes, and I will show you like an example of the way that the realm gate here could look with difficulty. So you basically just select your difficulty. As you complete each boss, you unlock, the next difficulty setting, and you can just select your difficulty when you're placing your fragments and stuff like that. Okay, now I want to talk about this was obviously inspired by the Legacy of Phrecia event, and this is like taking this idea further. What if we just redesigned the way that the additional content atlas trees worked? This kind of streamlines them from a design point of view, streamlines them from a visual point of view, and then also adds in like idols as like a whole fun thing. So the first thing would be like the redesign of the branch, right? Going away from like a tree into a single branch. And the idea here is that you have a static kind of progression from, one point to the next. But each time you take a notable, you get to select from a string of notables. So you can kind of see here, I don't know why that extra ring's there, but you can see like as I, go to take this notable, I can basically kind of like a, one-armed bandit kind of thing. I can just slide through my options here. And so each tier of notable node has like options from all of the ones before it, but then it gains new ones as you go through. And that's how you kind of like gate access to more powerful nodes. So the idea being that we've got 10 points that we can allocate, and each one we go through, we, you know, pick whatever notable we want, and then you can just like change those notables, maybe with a, you know, like a respec cost or whatever. So that's like a really nice way of streamlining the design. So you can see like I've mocked up a thing here, a reworking of like what the atlas could look like. You've got all of these different trees in nice, simple branches that go around the main tree. But yeah, if we come back to now like talking about idols, right? So idols, this is kind of like the out there crazy idea. But I think they're actually wicked. I think they're really, really interesting. But the problem they create by replacing the atlas is that they create a situation where everything's RNG, so you can't steadily progress through your atlas and your mapping progression. It feels way more like janky, and then it's way more dictated by the market, and you get this huge immediate separation between people. So I like propose a really like nice way to solve this, to keep all of the good things about idols, which is, you know, their ability to like really juice specific things and really play the content the way you want to play it, and their really good way that the designers can like add in new stuff without really having to change anything. They don't have to go in and change the trees or anything. They just add like a new mod to that type of idol. I think a cool way to do it would be, you have all of your travel nodes and you have your notable nodes here that like are options, right? And you have these pre-built options that we have on the trees already. However, as you drop idols, you can then socket those over the top of the nodes that you've selected. So you can turn, you know, like your, I don't know, your thing that makes breaches expand quicker. You can take that as you're like progressing through your levels. You've got these essentially like pre-built in options and idols there. But then say you drop like a really good idol, like you can see on like on the side there, it's like Dreamer's Sight Notable Breach Idol. You gain 20% more likely to be from Esh and 8% chance to have additional breaches, You can then go, oh, that's really what I want. I'd really want like Esh stuff for some reason. You can then just drop that idol in there and it replaces the notable, and then you can customize it. If you wanted to push this further, you could even have like, you know, travel ones. So like really simple things. So say the base one was like 10% more splinters. You could have ones that are like, you know, 18% more chance to contain a breach. You know the crack, like there's plenty of options there, adds more agency, more customization, but doesn't have any of the downsides of just being idols. And then I thought like a really fun thing to do, you can't really see it 'cause my big old head's in the way. You've got maybe like anchor idols. So once you've unlocked all 10 of your slots, you open up this anchor idol slot, which is like this purple section on the bottom left here. And then you can maybe have like these really unique gameplay changing idols that drop maybe like super rarely, or maybe they can only drop from like the highest difficulty pinnacle versions of the boss or whatever. I think the example I came up with here was for like people that just want to farm the bosses for drops and stuff. So entering a breach stone takes you straight to the boss. Your breach stones require 1,000 splinters to form, and you have 350% more rarity inside breach stones. So essentially this is running 3 breach stones worth of rarity in one, but they cost 3 times the amount, you know, to form. And you're going straight to the boss. So this is just for people that want to like, they're like, right, I really want to farm the highest tier of this boss and try and farm that, you know, Hands of Wisdom in action. Which will become a T0 unique, hopefully. You could do some crazy stuff with this, and this is like the place that I just thought would be fun for the designers to explore. Maybe it's like a much later patch thing. Alright, so with all of that said, that is my big presentation of what I think could be changed in the end game and with the current systems they have. So let's recap it. We got the map extension view, so being able to zoom all the way out and see the map and make plans and maybe even lay out node paths that you want to take would be super helpful. Being able to search nodes so you don't miss a unique node and stuff like that. Just get a sense of like how big your Atlas exploration has been. Next, get rid of tablets. Let's get rid of the busy work, get rid of this feeling that you need to have an optimal way to play the end game. Let's just allow people to juice in other ways. New towers, let's make towers completely different. The precursor compass, this idea of like the divine font, ways to interact and traverse the atlas, and then let's try and make the actual gameplay of those towers different. Content access and scaling, extra points, getting them earlier, so more easy objectives, and then moving over to a chance-based system. Let's just allow people to like toggle on a tree that they want to farm and guarantee that stuff. And then obviously, yeah, like we just mentioned, idles, essentially be able to oversocket your notables, invest further and further into specific juicing strategies, which would be really, really fun. Instead of having trees, you have these branches with, you know, like the sliding UI. That might be a nice way to just like streamline everything a little bit. And that's it. That is my 2 cents on what I think, you know, could be done with the current ideas that they've presented into the game. This isn't thinking about all the other ways that they can expand upon it. You know, maybe they bring Delve back and we actually go beneath the terrain, and, you know, like maybe they add extra things like the Realm Gate where we can access other content that way. Do incursion, you know, do we discover other temples like the Temple of Attuatl in incursions and their kind of nodes on a map and stuff like that? We don't know. All that stuff is kind of additional stuff, speculation for future. This is just how we readdress kind of like the core design ideas that they've put in the game. And I really, really want to hear from you. The reason I kind of make this channel, why I make this content, is because I love the PoE 2 community. I love the game. I love the sort of like mindset it attracts. You know, people like you, people who are watching this video and have watched this video through, who, you know, you guys have like great ideas, and I want to hear about them, because there's plenty of stuff that I've probably overlooked here. So please let me know if there's stuff that you think I'm kind of coming at from the wrong angle, or you've got a different take on it, because that is the stuff that ultimately inspires me and probably ends up helping me make more videos in the future. So yes, let me know in the comments. And then as promised, yeah, like I guess this is now just a section. This is like the end of the video in the terms of the content stuff, and now this is just about me and the channel and kind of what's been going on. So I think the last video I made was like very start of January or something like that, and I was playing a lot of PoE 2 at the time, but then obviously Christmas, had family and stuff like that, and I just bought a new PC. So for those of you that have been joining me on the live streams, you'll be aware of the disastrous streaming situation that I had, where my PC just couldn't handle running PoE 2 and streaming at the same time. I was getting all these issues and it kept dropping, and it was just like really, really bad. And it actually like super bummed me out, to be honest, because obviously there was a lot of hype. I'd spent a year making content in the build up to PoE 2's early access launch, and yeah, and then it just felt like a hugely like deflating thing. So maybe that had a bit of a part of it. I think there was a bit of an emotional thing going on. But also, yeah, I just came away from it. I ordered a new PC. That arrived when I got back from the holidays. And then there was loads of issues with it. The GPU was like, there was like a fault in the GPU. So then I had to wait for them to like send a new one. And it was just this whole process that ended up taking so much longer than I thought. And then in that time, obviously I had to earn money. So I had to like try and I work for myself. So I had to like drum up new business. It's always like a new thing at the start of the year to like pay for this new PC that I'd bought that wasn't working. It was just a very frustrating situation. So that's what has been going on for me. I am really excited to be back. I'm really excited to talk PoE 2 again. There is lots of discussion. I'm sure I'll have some conversations with, you know, some of our friends on the channel. And yeah, we'll get into the nitty gritty and thoughts about, you know, things like pacing and like where do they want PoE 1 and PoE 2 to be at in terms of endgame pacing. And yeah, I think I want to make a Ascendancy video about the Zealot that we designed with Dreamcore and with Try in the Ascendancy battle a while back. So I'm going to do a standalone video for that next, I think. I'm going to be sort of like easing back in, not hitting it super hard, but I'm also just like really excited to be back, and I'm really grateful for you taking the time to watch the video, to check in, and to everyone that messaged me like directly, just to check in on me and like make sure I was all right and stuff. That's like really, I massively appreciate it. It was very kind. I just needed some space, and I kind of like basically took some time away from Discord and everything. And I hope you didn't feel like left out in the cold or anything. But yeah, I just realized that, like, you know, after a year of pretty much grinding it, I needed a break and to refresh and to come back inspired again. So here we are. So friends, exiles, thank you for watching as always. I will see you in the next one. Ta-da.